And it's time for another edition of The Warning Track. Brett Quintine, Matt Mankiewicz with you each and every Friday, where we talk about baseball, and you know what, folks? More baseball because we love it. A Friday afternoon in the springtime quite often means day baseball at Wrigley Field, and indeed there was. The Reds defeat the Cubs by a score of 5-4. Jay Bruce with a home run, his 7th of the season. That wasn't necessarily the difference, but Jay Bruce continues to just put impressive numbers on the board. Cincinnati wins. Dusty Baker, he beats his old team.
And not only that, the fantasy players who have Bruce are cleaning up big time. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that because the Royals are going to have a very big debut tonight, too.
Absolutely. Eric Hosmer is leaving the Omaha Royals, and he is going to be a Kansas City Royal. Initially, the Kansas City Brass felt, all right, hey, you know what? We're going to start Hosmer in AAA, which they did. We're going to give him about 250, maybe 300 at-bats and bring him up towards the end of the season or maybe just after the All-Star break to give him some seasoning. But you know what? Hosmer had other plans. The 21-year-old is hitting .439, and when you are a youngster hitting .439, you can't not be brought up to the big leagues.
Unless A-Rod's in front of you.
That's very true.
Fortunately, he's a Kansas City Royal, so nobody's in front of him. The important thing here is that the Royals need the draw, no question about it. They have a payroll that is only slightly higher than A-Rod's total take for the season, and that's not counting endorsements or what have you. But the most important thing is, the biggest debate is it a little too soon? And not because he's not ready. He's hitting .439.
Sure.
The question, though, is, and then, you know, when it comes to ball players and money, the next word is usually Steinbrenner or Yankee. Okay? George Steinbrenner always said that during the first few years of a player's career, when he's not eligible for free agency yet, he holds the hammer. Okay? And that means he controls what they're going to be paid, and was never a big believer in signing guys early long-term, like a David Wright or Jose Reyes in our own backyard. But this case, that's the only chance you're going to have of keeping this guy for a prolonged period of time. And bringing him up before Memorial Day means you sacrifice a year of control. And that is the debate right now. Not that he's not ready. He's ready.
Sure.
And he can only help the Royals, even though the Royals are off to a decent start. But over the long term, he's a big part of their future. And is that future going to be cut short a year? Or do the Royals roll the dice and hope that these young guys in their system boost the team up to a level where their income is higher and where they can start making some investments?
I just think that for the Kansas City Royals, that 1 year is not going to make a huge difference. I mean, I definitely think, yes, it makes for good debate. Indeed, you're absolutely right as far as the control, that extra year. But I think in the smaller markets, unfortunately, these guys are going to leave anyway. I don't particularly think that Hosmer is going to be a long-range guy with the Kansas City Royals. No, I mean, he'll stick around his 4, 5, 6 years or whatever it may be. But I just don't think that one particular year is going to make a grand difference in their feast or famine.
In their long-term plans, maybe not, but everybody is looking back at guys like Carlos Beltran and Johnny Damon.
Sure.
Both,
absolutely.
By the way, came up through the Royals system in case anybody's forgotten.
Very true.
Okay. Could you imagine where the Royals would be now if they had been able to keep Johnny Damon and Carlos Beltran?
Absolutely.
Over their entire career. Because if those guys had come up through the Yankee system, that's exactly where they would be. Carlos Beltran would be... The only reason, actually, you can't really say that because Bernie Williams was ahead of him.
Correct.
So you can debate it.
But for the most part, the Yankees had that money.
If the Yankees had a player with that level of talent in their system, like they did with Derek Jeter,
yes, they did.
He stays a Yankee.
Sure.
But the Kansas City Royals have not had a guy, a Hall of Fame quality player, to spend their entire career there since George Brett.
Absolutely.
So there you go. But funny thing is, when you talk about some of the Royal greats, and we've been doing that a lot on this show over the first few weeks of the season, most of them did spend virtually their entire career as Royals.
I think one day we're going to dedicate a show just to that Royal scenario. I think we would have a lot of fun with it in a sense of we saw many a Yankee Royal battles. And indeed, you're right. That whole organization from, let's say, 76, 77 to the early 80s stuck around almost like no other team together.
It was a core. And I compare it in a way and to another team in the New York area, doesn't play baseball, but I compare it to a team in the New York area that has lived on a shoestring for quite a long time, the New York Islanders, and their 4 Stanley Cup run. Well, that team stayed together the entire time.
Absolutely.
19 straight playoff series wins, a feat unequaled in any sport. Okay, the Yankees, of course, have 13 straight playoff series wins.
Indeed.
So that's the most you can possibly have. Baseball, of course, having one fewer round than hockey or basketball. But regardless, it's very interesting to see what the master plan for the Royals is as it unfolds. And yes, they're on a very tight budget. But you know what? I think the example of the Tampa Bay Rays finally rubbed off on them. And Tampa Bay, you know, they did the same things. Got a lot of draft picks, signed the guys long-term, made good draft picks, which under Chuck Lamar they were not doing.
That's the one thing they definitely have had.
Good draft picks.
Longoria, Upton,
and now finally you're starting to see something happen. And you want to know something? They have an advantage the Rays don't. They play in the Central. The American League Central.
Very true.
They don't play in the American League East.
Which is loaded year in and year out.
The Tampa Bay Rays are competing in the American League East at a fraction of the payroll of either the Yankees or the Red Sox because of this. So why can't the Royals?
It's a good point, Mank. You always bring up good points. Yeah, no, I'd like to see the Royals. Yes, indeed. I'd like to see Hosmer be a strong part of the Royals, and I think he will be. Time will tell. Obviously, Alex Gordon's still there. They've got some pieces. Their head is above water. I believe they're 17-14 going into the weekend series against Oakland.
Which would mean one game behind the Yankees.
Isn't that funny? Isn't
Compile
that
the
weird?
entire standings. The Yankees have a couple of games in hand, but still, you know, we're talking about, what, 31 games? Way, way ahead of ourselves.
347-480-1724 is the number to call. Join us on the warning track. 347-480-1724. We mentioned the Yankees leading the American League East. We've also been talking about the American League Central. Surprise, surprise, the Cleveland Indians, 21-9. We spoke of this last week. This is a team that just continues to sail. They're playing great baseball. They're hitting. They're pitching. They're taking the extra base when they need to. They're doing the little things that they need to win ball games. And I really did not expect the Indians to be leading after 30 games, regardless of whatever division they were playing in.
Well, what gets you there tends to keep you there, barring injuries, of course. But the one thing that the Cleveland Indians have had over the last 3 years since they made their playoff run in 2007 is their core was pretty much intact.
Yes.
The only trouble is their pitching went south, and in many cases east.
Yes.
You know, or south.
Absolutely.
Cliff went south to Texas and east to Philadelphia. You know, or east to Philadelphia, then south, then back east. CC Sabathia. Okay, Sabathia and Lee, only 4 years ago, I should say, 2007. And they've been trying to rebuild that ever since, and they've been getting the pitching, which is, of course, vital. And, of course, the other problem is I'm hoping it improves. Weather in New York's getting better. It was only 49 degrees 2 nights ago. It's going to be 71 tomorrow. Okay, the Mets should have a good draw against the Dodgers, which segues to the next topic.
Yes, it does.
But the Indians should be, okay, they are on the road in Los Angeles this weekend, but next weekend, there should be more people there. Progressive Field.
There needs to be.
It may not be the draw the original Jake was. It's the same building. Back when it opened, and back when they were, 144 in 1995, and getting to the World Series 2 out of 3 years.
Absolutely.
But they should have a much better crowd following them because they managed to stick with it. Now they're 21-9.
Agreed.
Are they going to be for real in September? We don't know.
Right.
However, they are for real right now.
They're playing 700 baseball.
Yeah, and they are entertaining. And if you're in Cleveland, you know what? Take that coat off, put your sweater away, and go watch the Tribe.
Get out and watch. At 21-9, we mentioned Cleveland indeed has one of the best records in the big leagues. They are tied with a team that I think we expected to have perhaps the best record in the National League at this point in time. That's the Philadelphia Phillies. They're also 21-9, leading the NL East. This is a team that the pitching really supersedes everything, And they've been getting some of it. I should say they've been getting a lot of it lately.
It kind of has to.
Yes.
Because when you look at that lineup,
It's weak.
although you see the names, you don't see the numbers.
Right, they're not producing
And we're
at all.
complaining about Derek Jeter.
Right.
Hello, Jimmy Rollins. Hello, Chase Utley.
Correct.
Okay, the
Very
middle of their
true.
infield is not producing at the level they're accustomed to. But you want to know something? Nobody's talking about Joe DiMaggio 1951 in Philly.
Right, this is very true. Speaking of Joe DiMaggio, a 56-game hitting streak. There is a guy who plays in Los Angeles who is currently here in New York, looking to move his hitting streak from 29 to, for his sake, he hopes that it's 32 by the time he leaves town. That's Andre Ethier. He's kind of come out of nowhere. He's always been a respectable hitter, but I think what he's doing is very impressive, especially in April when you're just getting the blood flowing and playing in some cold weather towns, albeit, yes, LA is warm, but he's been on the road a few games also.
While I'm happy that a lot of cities now have franchises that didn't 15 years ago, namely Tampa Bay and Arizona, and the Colorado Rockies, Florida Marlins, 20 years ago, the one thing I miss about having a 24 or 2016 Major League Baseball is that even the Western teams would come in for 12 games, which would be
Absolutely.
2 series
Two sets.
each.
Yes, very
Mets,
true.
Dodgers were, believe it or not, a rivalry at one point. You know, even though they were bi-coastal,
Sure.
didn't matter. Now we see the Dodgers once. Okay,
Yes.
we see the Giants once.
Very
you know,
true.
normally they'd come in. Back in the day, they would come in. This wasn't too long ago. It was around this time of the year, early May, and they'd come back in late August.
Correct.
And
Correct,
with
yes.
pennant races on the line and a much more accommodating atmosphere because it's warmer.
Sure.
But you know, I kind of miss that. But you know what? I'm going to be at Citi Field over the weekend. I'm going to be watching these guys, and we're going to keep our eye on Andre Ethier. And Ethier, while we've been saying, has been a solid player for the Dodgers and really has had a lot of weight on his shoulders because he's supposed to be their next emerging star in many cases. Well, now he's getting in the headlines.
Yes, he is. He's putting the ball in play in major ways. Top 5 in the National League in hitting. He's doing what he needs to be doing, and I think the hitting streak is very impressive. I don't think he's going to pass Joe DiMaggio personally. I don't think anybody's ever going to do that, but I just think it is outstanding to see someone come in and day out and get that hit. And because baseball's not an easy game, you're playing it every single day, albeit he took the day off the other day. He was slightly injured.
You know what, though? Streak still counts.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
It's when he's in the lineup,
Sure.
he gets a hit, streak continues.
Oh,
Does
as it
not
should
matter.
be. Oh,
it's not
absolutely.
Cal Ripken or Lou Gehrig
Right.
here. It is just hitting, and to hit, you have to be in the lineup. So,
Definitely.
But you know what? It's also a good thrill for Met fans to have a series like this that may not have a lot of weight in the standings because it's still kind of early.
Correct.
But it's a nice thrill to see, will he do it?
Right, there'll
will
be a
the Mets
buzz
stop
each
him?
time
There
he
will
steps
definitely
to the
be a
plate.
buzz when he steps. And the other thing about it is, the Mets, believe it or not, even though they've been treading water as of late, they went on the big winning streak to get them close to 500. When you consider the pitching that they faced,
Yes.
Lincecum, Halladay,
Absolutely.
okay, you know they've held
stayed
their own.
abreast, sure.
They've held their own. Yes, would you like to see them go on more of a tear? Sure. By the way, it's about a week away, not a week and a half away from payday, okay, if you're paid on a bi-weekly basis. And if you're a Los Angeles Dodger and your check is coming in a few days, do you call your accountant and say, make sure the mortgage gets paid soon because I don't know if this next check's going to go through?
I just don't think it's going to come to that. I really don't.
I hope not.
Yes.
And
for
you
their
know what?
sake, correct.
We've been very fortunate in baseball never to have seen this, but we're both old enough to remember the American Basketball Association or the World Football League or the USFL or the WHA.
Yes, there's many
where
old league
it
out there.
happened.
Oh, it does. It
okay?
definitely does.
Where it was at the point in the USFL, and some teams, I remember hearing stories about this, where the coaches would get their paychecks first, make sure they got their paychecks first, so they cashed them first.
That's funny. Funny stuff.
So Basically, and these were the days before direct deposit. So you got to the bank.
Guys running to the bank.
Running to the bank on motorcycles. I mean, it was a mad rush, I'm sure, down the street to the nearest bank to make sure their check got cashed.
Funny stuff.
Yeah.
347-480-1724. Join us on the other side of the break as we have got a lot more to talk about. We're halfway through. You're watching The Warning Track.
Welcome to Sports. My name is Greg Dorman, and this is Rally Notes.
Racing fans, don't forget that on Thursdays at 7 p.m., it's time for Rally Notes. Greg Dorman, rally racing co-driver from Klein Racing, hosts guests and takes your calls about the entire automotive industry, rally racing, and auto racing in general. Rally racing is a great sport. They have Subarus and all sorts of off-road, all-wheel drive vehicles that run through the mud and the backlogging roads. But he's not only talking rally, he'll talk all sorts of racing and automobiles as well. We'll test cars, we'll drive cars, and we'll have a lot of fun. Rally Notes, 7 p.m. on Thursday. Don't miss it.
Live on Sportce.com. I'm Peter Schwartz, and we're joined by one of the current.
If you want everything sports, you got to tune in to Schwartz on Sports. Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., Peter Schwartz, the esteemed broadcaster, takes on everything sports. He's got everything from high-end pro sports like the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball to alternative sports like extreme games, lacrosse, tennis, golf, and everything in between.
Joined by Minnesota Vikings Hall of Famer John Randall. Last year, you were inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and that is the biggest honor that a player can get bestowed on him. What was that feeling like when you were enshrined in that candidate?
It was unbelievable.
You got to check out Schwartz on Sports because there's nothing you know that he doesn't. He knows everything sports. So check it out, 8 p.m. on Sportce.com, Tuesdays.
Welcome to Sports. My name is Greg Dorman, and this is Rally Notes.
Racing fans, don't forget that on Thursdays at 7 p.m., it's time for Rally Notes. Greg Dorman, rally racing co-driver from Klein Racing, hosts guests and takes your calls about the entire automotive industry, rally racing, and auto racing in general. Rally racing is a great sport. They have Subarus and all sorts of off-road, all-wheel drive vehicles that run through the mud and the backlogging roads. But he's not only talking rally, he'll talk all sorts of racing and automobiles as well. We'll test cars, we'll drive cars, and we'll have a lot of fun. Rally Notes, 7 p.m. on Thursday. Don't miss it.
Welcome back to The Warning Track, 347-480-1724. We'd like to hear you on The Warning Track. One game today in the ranks of the major leagues. The Reds take the opener of the three-game set at Wrigley Field. They defeat Chicago 5-4. Matt Garza is the loser. Edison Volquez is the winner. Well, leading us to this weekend series, kind of all eyes shifting towards Sunday. Sunday is Mother's Day. A promotion, or I shouldn't even really say a promotion, something that major leagues have done over the last handful of years that I've always really gotten a kick out of. I think it's very special. The guys wear, I shouldn't say they wear, they use pink bats on Mother's Day.
Well, they do wear the pink
And the ring,
armbands
yes.
and various accessories, and some guys wear the pink T-shirts under their
Correct.
uniforms, and of course the little pink ribbon on their uniforms as well. Regardless, it's a great gesture, and breast cancer awareness, and just literally doing it for your mom, your sister, your daughter, your cousins, nieces, regardless.
Any female relative.
Yes,
absolutely.
any female relative. And I've always appreciated that because, of course, everybody, it hits very close to home. Everybody
Absolutely.
knows somebody
Absolutely.
who has suffered from the disease.
Sure.
Okay, whether you're related or not, you know somebody. And the efforts that have been made and the advances that have been made are a direct result of the awareness that's been
Correct.
generated.
Very true.
And you know what?
And
Hey,
Major League Baseball's done a great job with that.
yeah, and they are the one sport, you know, hockey and basketball less so because they're in their playoffs, but they're the one sport that's fully active and has a full schedule of games on Mother's Day.
Absolutely.
So they're the candidates. They're the ones.
They've done a very good job
Yes,
with that.
and they've done an excellent job. Prostate cancer awareness on the male side, too, for Father's
Next
Day.
month.
So the ribbon turns from pink to blue. Regardless, both very important.
Absolutely. We were talking between halves of our show, Roy Oswalt.
Yes.
Scratched. We've got a lot of other stuff to get done in a short amount of time.
Yes, going to the doctor. Second baseman Chase Utley is going to extended spring training. But before tonight's game, Ruben Amaro Jr., general manager of the Phillies, said that Oswalt is feeling discomfort in his lower back and will be examined by team physician Dr. Michael Cicciotti. So Oswalt came back to the Phillies on Thursday. He spent 8 days with his family in Mississippi, which of course was ravaged by tornadoes.
Absolutely.
And we extend our hearts and our support to them as well.
Sure.
But he is going to be scratched from his Saturday start. So therefore, the Phillies with a 21-9 record, they've had setbacks in their lineup. Now it's starting to infiltrate the pitching a little bit. But you know what? Teams like the Phillies find ways to get through it.
Right.
And good teams find ways to get through it. Look what the Yankees have been doing with a patchwork rotation.
Sure. Yeah, I think the Phillies, with their resources, a strong farm system, they will get through it. And as you said, good teams find a way to do these things. And the Phillies have been very good for a while now. So while you certainly don't want to lose one of your 4 aces, the Phillies, no pun intended, are playing with a full deck. They will be able to mix and match. They'll find somebody to plug into that hole.
Kyle Kendrick.
Kyle Kendrick is more than capable. And I'm not going to say they won't miss a beat, but it is not something that's going to hinder them over the long run. I think they're that loaded.
Yeah, I don't think if he skips a start, fine. What you don't want to see happen, though, is if you lose them long term.
Right.
Because, again, they are strong enough that they'll withstand it during the regular season. When it gets closer to the pennant races, and if the Marlins hang around, and if other teams stay close, you want that extra arm there.
Absolutely.
And you especially want them in the postseason. But I'm preaching to the choir here. Everybody knows this.
The National League East, I'll definitely say, and I think you mentioned a good point in the sense of, regardless of who's playing poorly in that division, you don't want to have to go to Atlanta or New York for that matter, even if the other team is way behind in the standings, because I think the National League East, both Eastern divisions of both leagues, put up more than capable spoiler roll teams.
It is also way, way, way too early to be talking about spoilers because only 6.5 games separates first from last.
Very true. Very true.
I mean, obviously, 2 out of 3, 1 game in 5. The biggest difference between a 400 and a 600 team is 1 game in 5. You win 3 out of 5, you're playing 600 ball. You win 2 out of 5, you're playing 400 ball. But when you narrow it down to that, I used to think when I was a kid, if the Yankees didn't sweep a series, I was upset. My God, they lost a game.
It's about taking 2 out of 3 each time.
2 out of 3, okay?
2 out of 3 is outstanding.
Yes, and if you consistently take 2 out of 3, if you win, you go on win like 11 straight series like some of these teams have done, guess what? You've opened up quite a bit of a lead.
I was going to say you're going to be way ahead of the pack. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what the Mets and the Dodgers are going to be going after at Citi Field. And, you know, the Dodgers, of course, even though the off-field craziness is just getting worse and worse by the day.
Yes, it is.
Where you're talking about the McCourts saying that, hey, we need that loan from Fox. I need that TV contract from Fox. You know, $300 million. Hey, we'll be able to find out, pay everybody off, no problem. And Bud Selig is saying, you can't make your payroll at the end of the month. You're in trouble.
That's embarrassing. That's just very embarrassing. I don't want to see it come to that, especially not to a big-name franchise, because as we've talked about, the Dodgers are a brand. You don't want to see all of their laundry just come out like that. It's tough goings in Southern California, for that matter.
It's tough goings in Queens, too. And,
yes, it is.
You know, I've heard of a few names being thrown around for this upcoming series in New York. The Welfare Bowl.
Wow.
That's kind of harsh, but
yes.
when you consider the
Yes,
Wilpons
it
in
is.
their financial straits and the McCourts in theirs,
Absolutely.
and you see, well, the Mets, of course, have not had the success the Dodgers have had over the years, but you know what? They're still a New York team. They're
Yes.
still the descendants of the Dodgers in many ways, and not just because the Wilpons built Citi Field to be that way. But you don't want to see two of the the gold standard franchises
Sure.
of baseball
Absolutely.
in the straits they're in. And when you think about it, it's not because of the economy.
No, it's not. It's because
not-
of poor moves.
yeah.
Yeah, especially on the Mets.
Poor
part.
management.
Yes.
Poor management, and all the work that Bud Selig has done to put good owners in.
Yes.
Like, for example, right in the Dodgers' own market, Artie Moreno.
Terrific.
Okay,
He's terrific.
one of the best owners in baseball, no
Absolutely.
question
Sure.
about it. Team's consistently competitive, payroll is not excessive,
Correct.
fan experience is one of the best in the game,
Yes.
and he's not crying for a new stadium.
No, he's
Either
not.
of the
That's true.
Dodgers, don't get me wrong,
Right.
the
But
Dodgers
no, I
aren't.
know what you mean. They're not separated that
But
far apart.
you know
but
what
they're
else
having
happens
problems.
too? The dirty laundry is coming out in other ways too. Dodger fans are now blogging and saying, I knew there was a problem when. Okay,
Yes, that is-
I knew there was a problem when my top seats behind the dugout all of a sudden went away because McCourt had 2 more rows in front of me. I knew there was a
that's
problem
true.
when the lines got longer at the concession stands.
Cutting back
I
on
knew there was a
folks.
problem when there were no lights in the parking lot.
Wow, that's
And-
bad. No lights in the parking
No
lot.
lights
That's
in the
not
parking
good.
lot, and
That is not good at all.
And you know there's something wrong because you know someone is going to get sued and sued pretty bad because of the incident with the Giant fan
Giants
getting
earlier
beaten
in the
up.
season. Yeah,
So
it's turning ugly out there in Chavez Ravine. It really is.
it really
That's,
is. And when you think about the history and its recent history, okay, we have a mutual friend who worked in MLB.com who was a huge Dodger fan from Southern California, and we've both had discussions with him over this, and he just can't, he's beside himself. And
Yes.
I've had conversations with Dodger fans and people who have been affiliated with the franchise over the years, and it's just shocking.
It is. It's a bad scene.
You know-
But we are running out of time. And again, I would love to I don't want to say bash the Dodgers, but we could talk about Dodger problems for a very long time. But we always like to wind down the show with Mank on the spot. We talked about the Kansas City Royals earlier. Today, the Mank on the spot question is, what season will the Kansas City Royals have their next winning season? They're bringing up Hosmer. We both feel they've got some pieces. Will it be this year? Will it be next year? 2013? Beyond? They certainly seem to be in better shape than Pittsburgh. I think we'll both agree with that.
They are on their way, I think. I would say a 75-win season would be a nice step forward for them this year. Okay?
Because I've got my answer written right under here
75-87, I'll take.
for 2011.
For
70,
2011.
okay.
Okay. 87-75 is 2013.
Mank and I are in sync. 2013 is when the Kansas City Royals will have their next winning season. You heard it here first on the warning track.
And if we're wrong, so much the better.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on the warning track. Hopefully Eric Hosmer will have a terrific debut. Hopefully Mother's Day will be a success around the major leagues. Hopefully Roy Oswalt will return to form at some point. A lot of baseball this weekend, a lot of things to look forward to. And Andre Ethier, we're rooting for you. 29 and counting. Matt Mankiewicz, Brett Quintine, we'll see you next week on the warning track.